Hey, welcome back to the Consecrated Life Project, where we talk about embracing your mission and living your purpose with faith and confidence. And today our guest is Lesley Householder. Hey, Lesley.
Hi, good to be here.
Good. Thanks for being here. I absolutely love this woman. She is amazing, and I feel in a lot of ways my journey has kind of mimicked hers, in the fact that I didn't think I was ever going to do a business of any kind or any of the stuff. Going to be a mom, going to play with my kids, going to do whatever fills my heart on the side. And every time I try to go smaller and do things on the side, God says, no, nice try. This is global. And I'm like, okay, I trust you. Here we go. But Lesley is an author, a speaker, a mother of 7, and an absolute delight. She's authentic. What you see is what you get. And she's just here to share the truths that she's learned and to help people along their journey to following God and partnering with him in the creation of whatever's going on in your world. So thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Give us the first 2 minutes here. Tell us about you. Where are you from? What do you do? And what are you passionate about?
I'm in Arizona right now. My family moved all growing up, so I've kind of been from everywhere. But what I'm up to now is I have a company called Rare Faith, and we teach principles and programs that help people achieve their goals using the rare kind of faith that causes things to happen. So it is all about partnership, the partnership with God, and trusting in him, and not just about achieving what you want to achieve, but being conscious and mindful about doing what God wants you to do. You know, because you can use the principles to accomplish just about anything, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. And so that is one of the things that we try to do is help those who are really concerned about that, and helping them figure out what their life's mission is, which changes over time, but what they're to do right now, and giving them the tools to help them accomplish those things.
It's perfect. See, you're just a perfect fit. This is what we're all about at the Consecrated Life. Follow God and trust him. He'll guide you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So tell us the story of how you came to find your mission and purpose, and how you learned that this is what Lesley was created to do.
I sometimes I wonder if how much of what I'm doing now is because this is where God had in mind for me all along, or because I've just been so stubborn for so many years that this is a phase he wanted me to go through to kind of complete those years of stubbornness. I don't know, but when I was young, all I wanted to be was a mom, a wife and a mom. And we married, my husband and I, and the first 7 years of our marriage were really, really tough financially. I mean, to a very, I don't know that I've met anyone since that kind of experienced life the way we did at the time. And I realize now that so much of that struggle came because we just couldn't see a way out. We couldn't see how to change what we were experiencing. Couldn't see. I mean, I look now at what I've learned about life and how much God wants to help us. And I thought I was obedient. I thought I was doing all the things. I thought I was following his plan, and yet I wasn't allowing him to lead and bless and guide us, because I was so worried about what if it didn't work? What if we didn't have what we needed? What if this fails? What if that fails? What if, I was just so caught up in this survival mode, lizard brain. I wanted to trust him. I wanted to do what he wanted me to do, but I felt like he wanted me to just be wife and mom, but we couldn't afford it. So where was the money to help me do that? I kind of got frustrated and bitter. I'm like, well, don't you want me to do this? I thought that was your plan for me. I thought that was what you wanted me to do. And, I had my first baby shortly a year. Let's see, it was a little more than a year after we got married. We didn't have a lot of time to lay a foundation, to develop our relationship. We had known each other 4 years before we got married, but we were in different parts of the world for most of that, all but 5 months of it. So it was a long distance relationship. We hardly knew each other. And along comes the baby. And it was a joyous thing. It was a joyous thing. I just thought that we would be a little more prepared. Like, here I am trusting you, Lord, to do what I think I'm supposed to be doing. Why isn't it working? Why isn't it working? Is this not what you want me to do? And he let us struggle. He let us struggle and figure things out. And through trial and error, and I don't know, I was just thick-headed or something. I wasn't learning the lessons very quickly. And 7 years goes by and we're worse off, we're no better off. More kids are coming along and it's getting desperate. And I remember my husband, we knew that a check was going to bounce if we didn't hurry up and get money in the bank. And so he's scrounging the couches. He's looking for $2.40 something cents to go deposit that in the bank just to help not bounce a check. I mean, anyway, it was stressful. I feel the stress coming back. I think I have trauma. I need to get some therapy for the PTSD. Those were years that were just so hard and so desperate. And I lost a lot of weight while I'm trying to have babies, and it was just hard. But the whole time, I think he was letting me suffer that so that when we figured it out and when we learned how to trust and access the blessings that he wanted to give us all along, when I learned how to receive, because that was a very conscious thing that I had to do, when I learned how to do that, that I wouldn't just do it to enjoy it for myself, but that I would be so fired up about the answer that I would share it. It wasn't just, oh, things are better, now I can just go be mom. It was like, oh, things are better, I have to share what I learned. I have to do this. I have to teach classes. Because I knew there were other families out there struggling and in just as much pain. I had to believe. I mean, I didn't know any of them personally because everybody else was always doing better than we were that I could see. But I knew there had to be people out there who were suffering and struggling, and their marriages were on the line, and their relationships were stressed over money. And it was like, I hated money for that reason, that it would have such an impact on relationships and families. But if it had just been, oh, things are better, I would have just gone on with my life. But he let us go so long that by the time it happened, I couldn't not share it. I couldn't sleep if I didn't. I had to do something. And so I started teaching classes. Teaching classes became really hard because I had 5 kids, one on the way, and we were in a fix and flip home that we were trying to get ready to sell. And it was just crazy. So I thought, well, I can at least write a book. I'll write a book and I'll let that be my seminar so that I don't feel guilty not sharing what we learned. And that's where the Jackrabbit Factor was born. That was the first book I released as a published book. I had actually written a book called Hidden Treasures, Heaven's Astonishing Help with Your Money Matters as an ebook first. And that I was selling that as an ebook for a couple of years before I published it. But that became my new mission. And I thought that I might get bored with that, write my books so that now I can go back and just be mom. And I wrote the books so that I wouldn't have to teach classes, which is really funny because once the book got out there, it became a bestseller and everything. Now there was a demand for classes and people wanted to know more. I'm like, well, that kind of backfired. But I think God was just leading me along step by step. Like, here's the vision of what I can get Lesley to do. If I show her too much, she'll go back to bed. And I do that. In fact, I saw too much about 3 weeks ago and I went to bed for about a week. I'm like, can't, it's too big, too much. So he just gives me a little bit. And sometimes my prayers are, don't show me too much, just show me the next thing. Just the next thing. That's all I can handle at a time. And he knew that if I would just write a book, that would be the next thing. Oh, I can see that. I'll do a book. All right, there, and then I'll be done. And then I'll be done. And after the book, now it's time to teach classes. Okay, well, I'll teach just this one class and we'll record it and then I'll be done. And that's kind of how he's led me along for 20 years. And honestly, it's funny that we're having this conversation now because I'm looking at this interview that I'm doing with you and I'm like, okay, that's the last thing and then I'll be done. and then I'll be done. And then my assistant Carrie, she puts this thing together like, oh, I'm going to be teaching a class in May that we're going to record so that I can be done. And now I'm starting to wonder if I'm just kidding myself. But I have to believe that that's the last thing. Otherwise, I don't keep going. So I'm telling you way more than I plan to say. This is where I'm at. And I think this is part of the consecrated life, is just being willing to do the next thing and not knowing where it's going. And not knowing where it's going, because sometimes it's scary to think about what's beyond that. Do you experience that? Have you ever
Yes.
felt that way?
Yes, yes, yes. I remember when I very first started like all of this stuff, I was sitting in a conference and God was kind of like, where much is given, much is required. Like you're supposed to stand up and speak and teach and all this stuff. And I was like, I just wanted to stay home with my kids. Like,
Yeah.
and it took me a while to like step into that. And I remember being at a retreat one day and my mouth broke out in 7 canker sores all in one day. And I don't get canker sores. Like I never had them in my entire life. And all of a sudden I had 7 and I was like, what is going on? And in my heart, I kind of knew, and there was a foot zoner there. And so I'm like, hey, will you just like see what you know? And she's like, what are you not saying? And I was like, dang it. Of
Wow.
course I'm not. And so it was like that next day, I think I posted something on Facebook. It was just a paragraph or a live, or I don't even remember what it was. But within like 4 hours, they were all gone. And I was like, okay, that was one of those compelled to be humble moments of, you know what I want you to do, and you are stinking terrified of it. And so if you just step out and do it, then, so I just kind of hold to that one. I'm like, okay, he told me to do it. I don't care what the outcome is. I'm just going to do it anyways. And just trust whatever that looks like.
Yeah. I taught a class earlier this week that I didn't want to do. My friend had set me up with it, and for a few weeks before, I want to say no. I want to say no every time. And then there's something that just says, oh, you got to do this, just this one more, just this one, just this one more. And so she set it up and I'm like, okay, I'll do it. But then I'm mad for the next 3 weeks and I'm dealing with my own stuff in my head. And after it was over, I just felt like I used to feel like, whoa, that was amazing. I can't wait to share with someone else because I'm seeing the lights go on with people. But I've been doing it so long, I've just been like, I'll do the thing, I'll share, but it's not about me anymore. It's not about what I feel anymore. It's not about what I get from it anymore. I feel like it's what God's going to do for the people despite me. I'll open my mouth, but I don't participate in that feeling anymore at the end like I used to. And I've wondered what's wrong with that. Is there something wrong with that? What is that? And my friend helped me understand what that was for me. And she's like, I was trained when I used to speak it for this one organization. I was trained that you deliver your message, and when you're done, you don't have to think about all that it was or all that it wasn't, because sometimes we get in our head about, oh, I said this wrong, or I said this amazingly, or it's like you come away from it and you just say, I said what I needed to say. What was it? There's 3 things. I said what I needed to say. It was effective, and they got what they got. And then you move on. And I think that's one way that I'm learning to manage the roller coaster ride that it has been in the past. Because if I'm feeling all this amazing, woo, that was awesome, then I'm going to feel a dip after. I'm going to need to go speak again to feel that high. And I just don't want to ride the ride. I just want to do what God put me here to do, deliver what he wanted me to say, if there's something he wants me to say. And I don't want it to be about me, and I don't want to feel the ride. I just want to be with my family. I don't want to be exhausted. That was another thing, is if I felt too much with it, I would come away exhausted. And I'm learning that it's better to just deliver. People are going to get what they're going to get, and you move on. It's not, I don't know, this is a conversation that's going in a direction I did not plan for it to go, but I'm learning.
Okay. We're just trusting that whatever we say is whatever the people who are guided to it are what they need. So I know I've found that too, that if I think of it as it's not me and I'm not giving my energy to whatever it is I'm creating, but God is the source and I am the channel. And so it just comes through me. and then it doesn't have to drain me in the process of whatever it is that I'm doing.
Right.
And I actually get off of these things and I'm like, yes, I'm like so energized because I'm like, God is so good. He just like works through us and says whatever needs to be said. And I remember I was a couple years ago, I was speaking at like a Relief Society meeting. They had like a weekday meeting thing. And we were talking about all the like the weights and the burdens that moms carry. And this lady, she had all these balloons and we had written on them what all the different things was she was carrying. And something came out of me talking about if your kid had cancer and they were like in the hospital and you were living there and like the burden of that. And it was really weird because I remember right when it dropped in, I was like, that's weird. That wasn't like in my plan. And I said it. And when it was over, some lady came up and she was like, I lived that. And I was like, God knows us so intimately that if we just show up to say, I'm the conduit, whatever you need me to say, I'll say it. Like you said, it's going a totally different direction, is whatever that happens to come out. We just trust that that's going to be for the highest good of whatever he wanted this project, this interview to turn into. Because, my job was ask Lesley and she said yes. So here we are. So good. Okay. So can you think of a point when you were 100% committed? Like once we went through this experience and you got to that part of, I learned this, was it immediately, I'm 100% in, let me teach this? Or did you feel like it was, I'm kind of feeling drawn to it, but I was still fighting back and forth? And did you have a moment when you were like, okay, I'm surrendering completely. I trust you. Let's do this.
In 20 years, there's been a lot of that, in different phases. At first, when we had our own personal breakthrough and we enjoyed the changes for about 6 months, and then we got an invitation. Have you ever thought about teaching what you'd learned? And I'm like, that was a instant, absolutely, this is a decision. This is what I was born for. It's just like, yes. And then fast forward, I've been teaching, I've been writing the books, we created the Mindset Mastery program, all these things. And then my husband had been able to leave his job. We were doing this full time together. We were investing in real estate just as the market was peaking, and it tanked. And it was like, blindsided us, absolutely blindsided us. Everything was tanking faster than we were keeping up with. I mean, the business that we were doing, the speaking and the books and everything, we were having our best year ever. It was going really well, but it wasn't keeping up with the speed that our real estate investments were tanking. And so I'm like, are we successful? Are we failing? I can't tell. It's just a mess. And through that time, I needed to take a break from the speaking because I'm like, I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. These principles that worked like clockwork for us, they feel suspended. What's happening? I was asking new questions. I didn't know what to make of it. And so in the middle of all this, I was learning, well, we were facing like, what happens if we run out of money? We haven't been there for many, many years. And this is bigger money. We've got bigger responsibilities than we've ever had before, and a bigger financial nut to crack every month. And so do the principles work in these big numbers just like they did with the little numbers? And we were having an opportunity to test them at a whole different level. And in the back of my mind, I was always wondering, well, what happens if we run out? I mean, things are holding together for a while, but what happens if we run out? And I was trying to force that thought away because I didn't want to create something that didn't need to happen. And I had one mentor of ours at the time say, Lesley, your subconscious mind thinks you're going to die. So you need to answer the question. It's asking what happens if, what if, just for crying out loud, give it an answer so it'll be quiet. I'm like, oh, okay. So what would we do? If we run out of money? Well, we might have to move. Well, we might have to sell off everything. We might have to whatever. And we started talking through it. And just answering those questions was like, oh, well, we can deal with that. We just start over. No big deal. We know how to build. We know how to create. So we'll just get through this. We're going to be fine. And that kind of shifted things a little bit. And then what he taught us through those years was not just how to create and achieve a goal with bigger numbers and solve bigger problems and trust him even in a bigger way. But he taught us that he would take care of us even when there was no other visible resource available to us. We got to the end of our money. We had learned, well, we'd gotten to the end of our money. We had about $200 left in the bank. We had like $15,000 in bills due in the next week or two. And it was our anniversary. And I had said, honey, could we just, we haven't been out to eat for a year. Could we just go out to eat and pretend like everything's okay for just a couple hours? And he's like, what the heck? So we went out and had a meal for our anniversary. And during that time, we decided to think ahead 10 years. All right, so I have no idea how we're going to get through this week, no idea how we're going to get through the month. Do you think we'll have it figured out in 10 years? Oh, sure. Then let's talk about that. Let's build and create what we're going to be doing in 10 years and get our mind off of the here and now. And we started to get excited again. We started to build that vision for where we were going, and will we still teach the we do, and on and on and on. So we're building this vision, and we're changing how we feel, and we're getting excited again, and intentionally putting away the fears that had consumed us leading up to that. We paid the bill. We went out to the car, and behind us, the waiter runs.
Or you glitched for just a second there. So you were talking, I just want to make sure that they got what you said, that you said, would you still be teaching? I think that's what you said in the glitch.
Okay. Would we still be teaching? Of course, that's what we do. We'll be doing that, and how old will our kids be at the time? We're figuring out where they might be and designing in our mind the kind of house we would be in at the time and just creating that whole vision. And so we paid the bill. We were feeling better. We go out to the car, and running after us, the waiter came outside and said, wait a minute. We turned around, and he said, because it's your anniversary, the meal's on us. We had already paid the bill, and they had voided it. We didn't know they knew it was our anniversary. They must have overheard it. And they paid the bill. And that is when we looked at each other and we're like, that's what we need to keep doing. We need to keep looking forward and believing in a happy future. We need to keep trusting that God's going to hold us together day by day by day by day until we get there. I don't know how we're going to get through this month, but it doesn't matter, because moment by moment, he will sustain us if we maintain this faith and hope in where we're going, and that we're going to be serving and consecrating our life to his work. And it was from there, and long story short, we brainstormed again later in that month on how we can solve that immediate problem, because that didn't go away. Right. And so first of all, we got into this place of where we're going to be, what we're going to be doing, and how we're going to be consecrating our life before we started asking, how do we solve this problem? Now, that is one thing that is aligned with the principles that our programs can help people understand, is that you don't ask the question while you're in desperation. What are we going to do right now? What are we going to do right now? Because the only answers you're going to get are going to be on a level that are going to give you solutions that keep you right where you are. We had to first put our minds up on this other broadcast. Like, there is a broadcast of inspiration from God. It's getting in tune with the Spirit. And we do that by having hope, by having faith, by imagining what we can be doing for his kingdom and how he can be supporting us and others through us, and letting ourselves feel that before we ask the question. And as we asked the question in this case, he gave us an idea that we started following step by step by step. And in that month, I think we generated about $43,000. And it came from nothing, And so again, it's not about the money. It's about trusting God and in your participation in his work, and trusting that he has a solution for every problem that you can bring to him. But first, be dedicated to his cause. Jacob 2:19, is it Jacob 2:19?
I don't know.
One where you put first, if you've obtained a hope in Christ first, then if you seek riches, then you will find them for the intent to do good. and the scripture in the Bible that says, seek ye first the kingdom and all these things shall be added unto you. It's because you're doing it for the right reasons. And you won't need a lot of money to do the thing he needs you to do. If you don't need a lot of money to do the things he needs you to do, you just do the thing he needs you to do, and you'll have what you need all along the way.
It's beautiful. I definitely lived that as well. So that actually just answered the next question without me even asking it. I was going to ask about what opposition or resistance you faced and how you got through it. She just
Yep, there you go.
So that's beautiful. He knows. He'll guide us. Did you have any moments when you feel like, okay, I know which way I'm going this way, and then all of a sudden God's like, no, course correct, and you're going that way?
Oh yeah. Which time, right?
Whichever one you want to share.
Oh, well, like I had after the recession and after we'd gotten through that and we were kind of on a new path, I was tired, and I had already put the work that I was doing away. Like, I just need a break. I didn't know how long I would need the break. I had planned on kind of being done with it forever, like I do many times over and over and over. Oh, I'm sure he looks at me like, oh, Lesley, all right, here you go again. You'll be back. But there was a time where I just was needing a break, and it lasted about 6 years. And meanwhile, I didn't realize, but he was still orchestrating things. And I'd kind of gotten my work to the point that, like, I felt like it was done. And I started just hiding out. I would go to church and meeting people and not talking about what I do, not talking about what I've done, not talking about the books. I just kind of wanted to not be the jackrabbit lady for a while. And so there was a woman who posted on our ward Facebook group, said, I ate too many lemon bars. I need a walking buddy. Is anybody interested? And I'm like, I need to walk. So I joined her and we started walking, and we walked for a year. And we were talking about everything under the sun except what my work has been. And we were talking about family, and we were talking about relationships, and we were talking about our past experiences. And she was fascinating, which, by the way, is someone who is part of your series, Carrie Skrdla.
Yeah, she
I love that woman.
referenced you like 4 times, so it was really cool. We were like raving about you. So whoever watched.
Oh, she is my best friend. This woman is incredible. I don't know how much of your bio you got from her, but she is remarkable. She has been minister of another religion before she converted. She's been a professional clown.
She told us about the clown. She didn't tell us about the minister.
She was in charge. She was like a senior project manager for the 2006 Super Bowl for the city of Detroit. I mean, she's just an amazing, amazing woman. But so we're walking for a year talking about everything under the sun. And then it's better to hear her tell this story, but I'll just tell you in a nutshell.
Well, she did, so you feel free to tell us, because she didn't.
Okay. Well, one day we're walking and we're getting ready to pass this pomegranate tree that we always passed, and she said something that was from one of my books. And I stopped and I said, you just quoted me. And she goes, I did? And I said, yeah. I said, do you know what I do? She goes, yes. And I'm like, oh man. And she said that she had been with another friend of hers who's a redhead like I am. And she says, I have a lot of redheaded friends. And her friend was like, oh, really? Like how many? And Carrie said, 18. And her friend said, name them. Like she didn't believe her. And so she starts going down the list and she says my name. She goes, Lesley Householder. And her friend says, oh, you mean the author? And she's like, no, she's just a stay-at-home mom. And her friend, well, that's not a common name. She goes, like, you're right, it's not. So Carrie pulls up her phone and Googles my name to prove to her friend that this wasn't me. And she types Lesley H and it populates, and there I am. And she's like, oh my gosh. And so she tells me this story, and her friend was laughing. She's like, well, you've been walking with her for a year. You must have been doing all the talking. And we got talking anyway. Long story short, she got excited about what was in the books and what she was learning from them, and so much of it that she already understood, but that she had been teaching people with this piece missing, and she saw how this piece was going to help people that she was helping. And she said she wanted to join the Mindset Mastery program, and what she did with that program was tremendous. It's an experiment. We just walk people through 2 experiments. We teach them the principles, we teach them how to use them, and then in phase 1 they have an experiment with something that's like inconsequential. Like it really doesn't matter if it happens or if it doesn't, but they use these rare faith principles to make something happen. And then in phase 2, you apply what you learned in phase 1 to something that really matters. And so she went through this program, and she came to me one day and she's like, Lesley, God told me to work for you, to come to work for you. She was working, she had like a position at a university, like an administration position or something at the university, that she was going to quit to come work for me. And I was still kind of on break. Like I wasn't sure I was going to do anything else. And I looked at her resume and I'm thinking, there's no way I can afford someone with her experience. There's no way. And I said, well, I have no idea what that looks like, but let's go out to eat and talk about it. And so we went to talk, and I started to get a glimpse of what she does. Whatever she does, she grows. She causes growth. She worked for Disney in their HR. She nearly became VP of that. She before she quit to be mom, she has managed hundreds of volunteers for organizations. I mean, she's got this experience that I have none in. And she quit her job to work for me. We had an arrangement that doesn't pay her financially what she's worth. It works for us. She does it to work in God's economy. I know she talked about that in her conversation with you. But because and these are her words, she says, the more I work for you, the more God pays me over here. And so I hadn't planned on growing. I hadn't planned on going bigger. I hadn't planned on expanding our reach. I hadn't planned on any of that. And God sent Carrie to be my friend over some lemon bars. And so I'm learning to just kind of let go and keep moving my feet. I know Carrie and my husband, they're not afraid of the big picture. They talk about the big picture all the time. And I intentionally tell them, don't let me in on it. I just need to know the next thing. That's all I want, because that's how I operate. That's how I function, or I go to bed.
I love how perfectly God gives us the way that we need it. Because I remember when I was like, okay, what do you want me to do? Give me whatever. What am I supposed to do? And I would get all these ideas. I'm like, it constant ideas, but what is the thing you want me to do?
Which one's mine?
Yeah,
right?
Which one's mine? Which one is mine? And all I got was 2 words. And I was like, I don't really understand what that means, but okay. So I wrote it on a card and I stuck it on my fridge, literally for like weeks and months. And I would just walk back and forth and I would think about it. And it was the words creative sanctuary. And I was like, okay, so what does that mean? And then he told me that means like a 20-acre place with really cool trees and all these little cottages where people can come to write their book or create whatever it is they feel called to create. So creating that safe space. And I was like, okay, that's like the 20-year vision. I'm like, okay, so give like what's between here and there? Because I know I'm not ready for that. You're going to have to grow me into it. And I'm still not there yet. He's still growing me into where I'm ready for that. But it was like, okay, so what does that mean? And he was like, okay, it's in your heart. So it's creating that space in my heart where I can create whatever he calls me to create, and create a safe space in my home where my kids are free to be who they want to be and who they need to be, and to nurture their gifts, and that people in my neighborhood or my ward or wherever, that they feel safe in my space to be them and not to have to be something else or put on a mask or whatever. And he's like, okay, now you're going to teach that. And so I'm like, okay, so now it's turning into, start with you and then expand out to helping others teach in that way. And it was just really cool. And he did the same thing with the website. He's like, here's your domain. I'm like, okay, And my husband's like, it doesn't make alliteration. It's weird. You should change it. It has to be all the same letter or 3 different ones. I'm like, whatever. And then it literally took like 2 months. I had bought the domain, started the whole thing. And then God told me that what it means is you learn what you don't know, and then you have to apply it. So you live it, and then you can fly. And fly stands for feel like you. And it's when your body and your heart are aligned and you're doing what you're here to do.
I love that.
I was like, I just love how he knew, but he's like, no, you just get that trust process of step by step by step. Just trust me. I'll show you eventually when it's time. But
isn't it nice that we don't have to know everything? We don't have to know everything.
It is nice to know that when you believe that you don't have to know everything. When you don't know everything and you feel like you have to know everything, then that's when you get in trouble.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, one last question for you. Share a time when you feel like it looked like you failed to the world, but what did that do for you and what did you learn?
Well, I would point back to that recession, like where we had to short sell our home. And here I am, the expert on goal achievement, and helping people with their finances is one of the main focuses. And I felt like it was a failure. I felt like I needed to pull all the books off the shelves, cancel. I'm not sure if Jack Rabbit Factor is true anymore. And but it was through that experience, it really took the ego out of that. I didn't think I had. I really didn't think I had it, but it stripped it away even more, going through that period. And I remember there was a time where we had decided, let's see. So we were going through that, trying to make ends meet. The bishop was going to let us go to the storehouse and pick up some food. I'm like, we've got food storage. We don't really need food help, but the perishables, yeah, we could use those. And so I remember going to the bishop's storehouse through that and standing outside and taking a deep breath, thinking, I'm going to walk in there and there are going to be people in there who know me and my books. And I partway hoped that they thought I might just be a Relief Society president trying to pick something up for someone. But I do remember also thinking, Lesley, this is good for you. If you can't walk in there right now and receive help, then you're worse off than you think. You need to do this and humble yourself and just experience this. And I did walk in and I did see someone there who knew my books, and she looked surprised to see me. And I just greeted her warmly and gave her a big hug and got my food. And after 2 of those trips, we were having a third, and I told my husband, honey, I think you ought to take a turn. It's like, it's the least I can do, honey. He was very kind about that. But he came away from that saying, Lesley, we are never going back there again. We're going to fix this. And it woke something up in him. And it was hard, it was hard to accept help after being a speaker of these true principles. And just anyway, but through that, Jack Rabbit Factor was the book that kind of started the ball rolling. And through that came its sequel, which is Portal to Genius. And Portal to Genius is the one that shows how these principles work when things are, it's not just like in the first book, it's about if you think right and if you learn these principles, then everything's going to be okay. Because that's kind of how I saw it, because everything had become okay for us. And then I learned what it felt like to apply the principles and have things not be okay. Well, what about that? And that's what the second book answered, because, the character in the first book, Richard, he comes away from that feeling like, oh man, now we're going to conquer the world. And the first thing that happens in Portal to Genius is he gets a reduction in pay. And he has to make sense out of that. And this brings me back to the whole law of polarity, that that in that adversity is the seed of equal or greater benefit. And he had to look at that reduction in pay as, how is this good? How is this good? And what it launched him into. Just my hope is that it gives readers confidence that when things are at their darkest, that's when you can begin to become the most excited about what comes next, because there is that polarity. And so, yeah, it was awful. It was hard, but I wouldn't give that up. I wouldn't give that experience up for what we learned in how to trust God to a level that we had never experienced before. It was worth it. It was worth it. It makes me think about the pioneers and what those Martin Handcart Company pioneers said. The one who stood in a meeting where someone was criticizing the leaders for sending them so late in the season. And he stood up and he says, "You don't have any idea what you're talking about. I was in that company, and the price we paid to become acquainted with God was a privilege to pay." And that's what I can say about those years for us. And it's given me more empathy. It's given me more experience. It's given me even greater trust, because it taught me that it's not just about, okay, what do I want to create next? It's about learning to trust God moment to moment and letting go, just absolutely letting go. It's a hard thing to do. You can't really experience that and learn that unless you have adversity. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to let go. Let go of what? What are you dealing with? You have to be dealing with something to learn how to let go.
Definitely true. And I love that. So when I think of like consecrated life, I think of everything I have, all my time, all my money, all my resources, everything is yours. Tell me what to do with it. I'm just the steward of what I have.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's part of the process of, okay, now what? And I call it divine restructuring or divine redirection. I've lost a job, got cut in pay. It's like, okay, what do you want me to learn? And obviously they'll have to read the book to find out what happens, but it's totally worth it. You should read it. All of them. So if people want to contact you, how do they find you? And where would you like to send them?
Yeah, everything is at rarefaith.org, RARE faith.org. There's free, all 3 books are available for free downloads. You can read them, no charge. You'll learn more about the Mindset Mastery program there. We've got Genius Bootcamp events, which are based on the book Portal to Genius. It's a 3-day workshop. Those are life transforming. And I hope to see you there. We'll join our community. We'd love to support you. We've got a podcast, the Rare Faith Podcast, which takes conversations like these and makes them available to you anytime you want.
It's fabulous. I always go back to your podcast when I'm like feeling like things are getting hard. I need to remember I can choose to believe. Go listen to Lesley. And every time pulls me right out. So thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate you.
All right. Thank you so much, Livia.
You have a good day.
Bye-bye.